And God said, "Let there be
The
light."
Lord says, "Let my people go."
I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
This is the Talkin Bible podcast.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the Talkin Bible podcast with Rohan Bell. Great to have you today, and I'm sitting down with Jeffrey Baxter again. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Pastor Rohan. It's good to be here again,
Good
mate.
to have you, as always, and always enjoy our conversations.
Yep.
And today it's just a little statement, process where Jesus reinstates Peter at the end of John chapter 21. We're looking at that, aren't we?
That's right. And
Significant moment for Peter.
I suppose we need to start by what does that mean? Why does he need to be reinstated?
Yes, good point. What does that mean for those that may not know the story?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want me to do that, or did you want to do that?
You can do that if you like.
No, go on.
I'll do it.
Let's
Okay.
let you do the story.
Let's just do it quickly.
Yeah.
So in the night before Jesus was crucified, Jesus predicts that, all the disciples are going to fall away and give up on him, I suppose. And Peter says, not me. The rest of these guys might do it, but not me. There's no way. And Jesus says, well, you'll deny me 3 times before the rooster crows in the morning. And Peter's like, no, that'll never happen. Anyway, of course, it does happen.
It does happen.
Because Jesus, what he says is going to happen happens. So Peter, we imagine he is quite distraught that he, when he hears the rooster, and we've probably seen in all the movies and that, Peter sort of turns and looks at the rooster and goes, what have I done?
It says he goes outside and weeps bitterly in one of the versions, yes. Completely feels like he's betrayed Jesus, gone back on his word.
That's right. Denied Jesus 3 times.
3 times, not just once, 3 times, and actually cursed in the process. Called down,
right.
Basically swore and said, I don't know the man, with a few expletives in there.
Yep.
Yes, that's
exactly. Right. And so here we are now where at the time after Jesus has been crucified, he's risen from the grave, and he'd appeared to his disciples, and he'd spoken to them a few times. And on this occasion, he's standing on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and the guys are out in the boat, and Jesus performs this miracle involving fish, which he seems to love doing stuff with fish.
Yep.
He does this fish miracle.
Which they recognise because that was one of Jesus' miracles right at the start of the ministry when he called them.
Yeah,
this is a repeat. So this is like a little, a reminder of who he is.
Yep.
Identifier.
We're back where we were at the start, sort of thing.
That's right.
And he cooks breakfast for his mates and says, "Come on in. I've got some bread here, and you guys have got some fish, and off we go." So that's the background to this story. So let's have a look at verse 15. So we're in John 21 and verse 15. So they'd had their breakfast, and when they'd finished eating, Jesus says to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Now, I'd like to just stop here because there's a lot of questions here, Pastor Rohan.
Who are these?
Well, before that, Jesus calls Peter Simon.
Ah, yes.
Simon was his name to start with.
Yep.
His name changed to Peter when he realised that Jesus was the Christ. Now, Jesus is back calling him Simon. Anything in that? I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely there is. This is Jesus gently reminding Simon that he wasn't the rock that he thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
Because Simon kind of means reed, kind of has this sense of being able to be easily manoeuvred and swayed. Yeah. That's what the name means. And Jesus renamed him. You're no longer a reed tossed around. I'm going to make you a rock. I'm going to call you Petros. And then he reminds him, actually, you're still Simon. You're still a reed. Yeah. So it's a gentle but nonetheless distinct reminder to Peter that he failed.
Yeah. Poor old Peter. He hears this and he thinks, oh man.
Exactly. He'd be thinking, I'm back being Simon again. Yeah. Jesus is calling me Simon. Oh, no, what's he going to say next?
Yeah, I've really messed this up.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. Like, this is it. Because I often think about this with Peter. I often think, even afterwards, even after he knows about the resurrection, and Don Francisco talked about this, I think one of his songs, even if he is alive, he wouldn't be the same. I think that Peter must have thought, well, even after the resurrection, when he goes to the tomb and sees John and him are at the tomb, and He must have thought, well, it's good for these guys, but I've done it. I've
Yeah.
done my dash. You
Yeah.
know, I promised him this and I fell through. So Peter's still got that internal struggle of feeling like he is Simon and I'm always going to be Simon and he's never going to make me Peter ever again. You know, well, it was great when he told me I was Peter, but no, I'm Simon again now. So with all that in mind, that seems to be what Jesus is alluding to here, calling him Simon. He doesn't know what's coming next. He just knows he's calling him saying, hey, Simon, do you really love me? You know that you said you would. You said you'd die with me. Will you?
Yeah, I guess he might have had thoughts, well, you know, am I no better than Judas? Judas went out and, you know.
In fact, Jeannie and I had a conversation about that as we record this. You probably haven't listened to it yet, but we were talking about the contrast between Simon and Judas.
Yep.
They both betrayed Jesus.
Yeah.
There's actually no difference in the level of betrayal. It's the one that was able to come to the point of repentance was the identifying factor.
Yeah.
But really, his betrayal was as ruthless as Judas's betrayal.
Yeah.
In many ways, probably more so, because Judas, probably his betrayal was based in this sense of unmet expectations about what he thought Jesus was going to be. Whereas Peter's is no unmet expectations. His is just flat out fear for his own backside.
Yeah,
You know,
I guess so.
fear for being thrown in the mix and being included. So his betrayal, in some ways, potentially is worse than Judas's. So he's wrestling with all of that.
Yeah.
And what I love about this story, we're going to see, is the tremendous grace that Jesus shows him, which reminds me that the times where I've denied Jesus, he is still there to reinstate me and accept me again.
Yeah. Okay, so the second part of that verse, Simon, Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs. So the question is, love me more than these. I've done a bit of research on it, and there's, you know, I guess there's obvious things that you might think about in this. And I guess the first one is, do you love me more than you love your fellow disciples?
Yep.
The people and the particularly the ones that you had an intimate relationship with, and your brother Andrew.
Andrew, yeah.
Do you love me more than these
them.
guys,
Yep.
or you know, do you love me?
Which is a valid. That's the these. The do you love me more than these? Yep.
Yep.
Love me more than you love these guys. Yep.
Yep. There's the do you love me more than
These guys love me.
Well, yeah, there's that. There's do you love me more than the boat and the fish and all the worldly goods that come along with it,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
Remember, you denied me, so you could, you
Yep.
know, do you know? Yep. And do you, you know, and like you said, do you think you love me more than these other guys? Like,
Yeah.
you know, you were bragging about how much you would never, you know. And
Yep.
so, you know, there's all this. Do you love me more than these? And Peter says, yes, Lord. You know that I love you.
Yes.
And of course, Jesus does know that
Yes.
Peter loves him.
Yeah. But he wants him to affirm it. Yeah.
Yep. And Jesus says, feed my lambs. Now, as we look through this, we'll see that Jesus kind of says the same thing, but in a different way, doesn't he? Like,
Yep. He feed my sheep, care for my sheep, feed my sheep, etc. Yes.
Yes.
Sort of similarities, but there are subtle differences.
yeah.
Yes.
So, do you think there's a reason he says lambs, starts with lambs here?
Well, lambs are children. Lambs are young. So I
the
think
young
there's a
Christians?
there's a tenderness there.
Yeah.
He's talking here about the young ones, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
John seems to be picking on the three, you know, feeding the lambs, taking care of the sheep, feeding the sheep. All three are an essential part of discipleship.
Yeah.
Or part of what Peter is being charged to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Let's read on. In verse, so Jesus has said, feed my lambs. And verse 16, again, Jesus says, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And Jesus says, take care of my sheep. In the verse 17, the third time, he said to Simon, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Now, we switch over to Peter here. It says, Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. So, thrice.
Thrice.
So if you use the word thrice, it's it's got more impact.
It does than 3 times.
3 times. So
Once, twice, thrice.
thrice denied, thrice restored.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is the beautiful picture of our Lord, isn't it?
That's right. He goes out of his way to restore Peter 3 times, thrice for the 3 denials.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And then, you talked about this, feed my lambs, feed my sheep, and care for my sheep. So that's part of what we do as
part of the pastoral ministry, as part of what we're all called to do, actually, not just
that's right,
Peter.
not
Yeah, that's right. But we can all have this aspect of we're called to care for one another. And it's linked to discipleship here, regardless of where a person is on the journey. Even sheep need to be taught and cared for.
That's
so
right.
there's all the way along, fed, taught, cared for.
And I guess it harkens back to the new commandment, isn't it?
Love one another.
Love the Lord God and love people the way that I've loved you.
Yep, that's right.
So,
same thing.
Yeah, if we're going to be reinstated, if you like, okay, now go off.
Go and do something.
Do what I've asked you to do. Just go and love people and care for people.
Yeah, what's Jesus asking of Peter here? He's asking that he be a lover and a carer of others.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to show me your love? And look, I think, I haven't checked this for a while, but I'm pretty sure the Greek, so when Jesus, you might have it in your notes, Jesus says, Peter, do you agape me? Or agapeo me? Okay. Peter says, I phileo you. I think twice he says, Peter responds not with agape, but with phileo, which is a different level of love, like a friendship, a companionship love. Yeah. And I think 3 times, on the 3rd time, he says, I agape you.
Okay, so that's that unconditional
love. And it's almost that sense of Peter's response the first few times is that he's almost unable to feel like he could say that he agapes him unconditionally, because in the back of his mind, he knows he said that once before, I'm ready to die for you, and he didn't. So it's that constant reinstatement and reaffirmation that gets Peter back to that point where he says, I can love you unconditionally, which one shows his unconditional love that Jesus has for him is that he doesn't go, right, that's it, Pete, you're done. But he gradually encourages Peter and accepts Peter to the point where Peter is able to feel like, okay, I can agape him. And he does. I mean, he'll stand up a few days later at the day of Pentecost and preach at risk of his own soul to see a multitude of people. He'll ultimately surrender his life upside down on a cross, historians tell us. So he did do it. He did do this, but he needed to be reinstated and affirmed in order to get to that point. And I know in my own life, if I've really blown it, if I've done something that, maybe had a major anger outburst or something where I've hurt people and upset people, and I'm pretty much beat up on myself because I feel like I've let Jesus down, I've let other people down, I've let myself down. It takes time. I know I should be able to just flick and go, I'm forgiven, move on, but it takes time to feel like I am accepted again. I know that part of me used to go, well, that's just my own problem. But now I've realized God's patient with me. He knows how hard I can feel on myself, but he, just like Peter, he reinstates, gradually and graciously reinstates us to the point where we know, okay, I can love him again. Yeah. He loves me, but I can love him.
I guess it's a bit of the, forgive and forget, isn't it?
Yes.
Where we can know that we're forgiven, but we can think, well, he's never going to forget.
He won't forget,
that. But he's brought Peter along to a place where Peter's been able to accept, I'm completely back in.
Yes, totally.
I'm back where I was before.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Jesus is a pretty good guy.
He is. He shows his tremendous love. Jenny's always asking, what do we learn about Jesus in this?
Who is this guy?
Who is this guy? She says, yeah. And that's it. This is a Jesus who's patient with us, who reinstates Peter graciously, who doesn't hold his sins against him. That to me is so encouraging, that God was able to use this betrayer who promised everything and betrayed him and reinstated him, and is able to use him to then be a source of strength.
Yeah.
Earlier in John's Gospel, Jesus says to Peter at the Last Supper, he says, Peter, the devil has asked to sift you like wheat, but I've prayed for you.
Yeah.
And when you turn back, strengthen your brothers. And that's when Pete goes, what do you mean turn back? I'm not going to leave you, Jesus. I'll die with you. And Jesus says, no, you won't. So Jesus knew Peter was coming to this point where he was going to revert to Simon.
Yeah.
And he still prayed with him. He still loved him. And here we see the outworking of that in this public reinstatement.
Yep.
What we don't see in this story is that Jesus has also privately reinstated Peter prior to this story.
Yeah.
We see that in the book of Acts. We have it referenced, but we don't actually hear that story. It's a private story. It was between Jesus and Peter, but he clearly was reinstated privately in a one-on-one, and then we see a public reinstatement here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's the way that Jesus does reinstate us, doesn't he? And I know for myself, many times over the years, I've thought about this story, thinking, "Cool, he'll take me back."
Yes. Yes.
Luckily, it's more than 3 times.
Yeah,
Because,
exactly.
However many times
we
I
fall.
know, he'll do it for us.
That's right, for sure.
Okay. Verse 18, very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted to go, but when you're old, you'll stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you don't want to go. And Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, follow me. Well, you spoke about the way that he ultimately will die.
Yes, that's right.
Well, we think he will die, but the thing we can see here is that he's going to live for a long time.
Yes, it would seem like he's going to live for some time. Yep, that's right. Yeah. One day it's going to happen.
And his life is going to glorify God.
Yep.
It says right there that he's going to glorify God.
Yep.
In his life and in his death. Now, he says, follow me at the end there. Okay, and then in verse 20, Peter turned and saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. Now, this is John talking about here. John calls himself the disciple who Jesus loved.
Yep, the author of the book. Yep.
Yep, which is fair enough if he understood that. That's good. This was the one who leaned back against Jesus at the supper and had said, Lord, who is going to betray you? When Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? And then Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yep. Don't worry about the others.
Yep.
Your job's to follow me.
That's right. Even if John doesn't die, even if he lives for, let's say he hadn't died and he'd lived now for he's a 2,000-year-old man, John, we don't then say, bow down to John and follow John.
No, that's right.
Jesus going, no matter what happens, you follow me.
Yeah, that's right. No matter, and I've likened this to as wrestle through your own my own journey through recognition or acceptance or whatever. How come that person gets the acceptance, or how come that person gets the miracle, or how come that person gets healed and my family member hasn't been healed, or whatever it might be. And it fits this context for all of us, is that our job is ultimately to follow Jesus. Whether or not we think everyone is being treated the same, we have to trust in the infinite wisdom of God, that he is no respecter of persons. And if for some reason he wants John to stay alive, he doesn't, but if for some reason he wants John to stay alive longer, that's in God's divine plan. My job is to follow Jesus. It makes my job a lot easier, actually, because I don't have to be constantly comparing myself with those around me to go, how come they get the accolades, or how come they got the miracle, or how come God provided for them the finances. Let's just go, my job is to follow Jesus, and if I do that, I trust that he will bring it all out in the wash, and in the end, he will have my best plans and my best, the best intentions at heart.
That's right. If you think about that, we're the clay, he's the potter, he can use us for, noble purposes or ignoble purposes.
That's right. That's up to him. Yeah. I think that's the point Jesus is making here. Your job's to follow. Twice he says, follow me.
Yep. And if we can be content with that, that's one of the secrets to a happy life.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's the definition of discipleship, a person who follows Jesus, a person our mission statement here belongs to Jesus, becoming like Jesus, build his kingdom. That's a follower.
Yeah.
Our job is just to follow him and be where he's at, be about his business, and be building the things that he's building.
Yeah. And I guess it's more than just being content, isn't it? It's also having this sense of joy and fulfillment in our lives.
You're right. It's actually, this is where you will find your greatest joy. He's basically saying to Peter, if you try and do what John's called to do, it will kill you because it's not your calling.
Yep.
If you're trying to be someone else, not only will you be robbing yourself of your best life, but the thing God has for you, you'll actually miss out on what he has for you.
Yeah.
So be content to follow him into the things he's called you to, and that's where you'll find true joy and true fulfillment, not in trying to copycat another pastor or another leader or another person or another Christian. Don't try and do that. Follow Jesus. Like you said, follow him. Don't follow other people.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And Peter, you just stand up there, you preach the gospel, mate, and you'll see what'll
happen. Yep. That's right, exactly.
And as we know, it
revival broke out just a few days after this.
Yeah. I suppose we should just finishing up here, we should just say that because of this, the rumour spread among the believers that the disciple John would not die. But Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you?
Yeah.
So
obviously by the time this is written, there's that going around. And scholars tell us that John was younger, definitely probably why he was the disciple who Jesus loved. He was the younger of them. And he did outlive most of the others were martyred. And John, history tells us they tried to boil him in oil and it didn't work.
Yeah, okay.
And eventually he died of old age, only much later in life, probably around the turn of the century. So as time goes on and he's getting older and older and older, I can see why they're thinking that. And John's just correcting that, going, that's not what Jesus has said.
And poor old John, everyone's going, oh, you're going to live forever, John.
That's right. Where do you get it? Yeah.
Where'd you get that from?
Exactly. Especially when, we don't know from the Bible, but there is adequate historical evidence that says that Nero or one of the Caesars wanted to kill him by boiling him in oil and it didn't work. He went in the oil and came back out the other side. Scarred, apparently, but survived.
No, Jesus didn't want him to die.
Jesus didn't want him to die. So you can imagine why this rumour continued.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Just shows how you can, John could have gone off and started his own little Church of John.
The church of the boiling oil. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. He could have. He kept following.
Immortal.
See, John kept following Jesus too. That's the thing. All the way to the end. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's it for this one.
All right, that's it.
Thanks,
That's John
Pastor
21.
Rohan.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk to everyone tomorrow.
Okay.